We finally have the Saturday box office figures for Avengers Endgame and the projected Sunday official figures, which bring its total right now to $2,772,462,833. So what does this do for Endgame's bid to become the biggest film of all time? Well, it only needs $3.8 million extra to beat Avatar. It'll get this $3.8 million. It will beat Avatar, except, as I've said in some of my other videos, if you watched them, there are two figures floating around for how much money Avatar actually earned. So on the left-hand side here, we have the figure from thenumbers.com, and on the right-hand side here, we have the other figure from Box Office Mojo. So the total for the domestic box office for both of them is identical down to the last dollar, $760,507,625. But the international figure, we got $2.015 billion up on the left, and we have $2.027 billion on the right-hand side. So there's about an $11.5 million difference between these two numbers. I've been using the lower figure. I have been mentioning the other figure in most of my videos because it did look like Endgame wasn't going to beat either of them. So there was no sense in using the higher figure. Might as well use the lower one. But now it looks like it will beat the lower number. So I did suspect that that would happen when they announced that they would relaunch the movie. It needs another $3.8 million to beat it. It's going to get $3.8 million. At least I believe it'll get more than $3.8 million. So it's done. As far as the numbers.com is concerned, very, very soon, Avatar will be the second biggest film of all time, and Avengers Endgame will be the new biggest film of all time. But let's look at the sort of numbers breakdown and see, is it possible for it to beat the other figure, the bigger figure? Can it get an extra $11.5 million over the $3.8 million I think that it will get? So last Friday was where the Avengers re-release happened and earned a lot more money than it was looking like it would earn on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And then on Tuesday, that's where Spider-Man Far From Home was released. So here are the actual numbers in the US domestic market on Tuesday. Very nice number for Spider-Man, $39 million, biggest Tuesday ever. If you look at the change column, that should be around about 30% for most of the films. That's what you'll normally see in a holiday period. 30% increase from Monday to Tuesday. Now, Toy Story 4 has a 28% increase, which means Spider-Man didn't affect Toy Story 4 at all. A little bit stranger, but all of the other films, they got absolutely hammered by Spider-Man opening up. So Spider-Man crushed everything else on Tuesday, but one of the worst films that got hit was actually Endgame. So Endgame got negative 33%. So instead of getting a 33% increase, and then perhaps getting a bigger increase because Spider-Man was sort of helping it out and people deciding to go see both films, it got the opposite. So Spider-Man came out, and anyone that was interested in the MCU basically saw that instead of Endgame, which makes sense to me, but the option was obviously that people might go and see both films at once, or perhaps couldn't get in to see Spider-Man and wanted to see something else, to go see Avengers Endgame. That certainly didn't happen. So on Tuesday, Avengers Endgame got absolutely smashed. Everything got hit, but Avengers Endgame got hit just about the worst. I mean, Godzilla is a little bit worse there, 54%, but it's earning a lot less money. But if the films up the top section, Avengers Endgame, very bad number on Tuesday, 33% reduction. But on Wednesday, it recovered a little bit, and then on Thursday, it had a fairly good result compared to most of the movies, and then Friday had a bit of an increase, not as good an increase as you'd normally get for a film, but a bit of an increase on Friday for Avengers Endgame. And here we've got the Saturday, and we can see that Avengers Endgame at $1.2 million for Saturday versus $1.39 million for the film just above it, Men in Black International. So although the Tuesday was particularly bad for Endgame, it looks like it recovered after that. Now, it's hard to tell whether or not Spider-Man is actually helping the Avengers Endgame box office, or if all of the extra money it's earning is because of the re-release. I think it's probably a combination of both, but it definitely is keeping a lot more of the money than you might expect in a re-release. This is a bit of a strange re-release here for Endgame. It's a bit easier to see what I'm explaining on this chart here. What we have is the Endgame and the Infinity War box offices from about 6 weeks ago, where they started earning the same kind of money. And for about a week after that, they were right on top of each other. And then after that, Endgame started earning around about 75% of what Infinity War was earning every single day. And the blue line just slowly creeps a bit further down every day, a bit less, bit less, bit less. And it looks like it was just going to flatten out, and that was about it. And then you can see where the re-release was. So there's a big sudden spike up. That's where the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday re-release was. And then after that, we got the Monday, the Tuesday when Spider-Man come out, the Wednesday, Thursday, and then a little bit of a deviation up again. That's for the Friday, the Saturday, and the Sunday we've just had. So it looked clearly like from 6 weeks ago, Infinity War was going to out-earn Endgame. Now it looks like that's not going to happen. It looks like Endgame will earn more money in its last 6 weeks, if you like, than what Infinity War actually earned. So if this change in the box office trajectory that Endgame is currently on, will it earn more money than Avatar earned according to Box Office Mojo? As I said earlier in the video, it's going to beat the Numbers.com figure. That's done, okay? As far as Numbers.com is concerned, Endgame's going to be the biggest film full time. But will it be the undisputed biggest film full time and beat the Box Office Mojo number? Here we have the raw numbers for Infinity War on the right, and we've got Endgame on the left for the US domestic market. Down the bottom we have day 73, that's the Sunday that is just starting or is just finishing, depending on your time zone around the world, and the $827,000. That's the projected figure right now, and they always project out the Sunday figures. Now, the previous week, it got $1.9 million on the Sunday, that's day 66, but I think they projected it to get something like 1.3, so the projections are off by a fair bit. So this $800,000, I would be a little bit suspect of that simply because the last Sunday was so wrong. Maybe it'll get a bigger figure than that, but nonetheless, that's the figures that we have right now. Now, if we look up a few weeks beforehand, if we go up to day 57, that was the Friday before the re-release happened. So that's a week before the re-release. So you can see before the re-release happened, it got $530,000. That's all it was getting on an actual Friday. And it looked like it was probably going to get something like 30 or 40% underneath that for the next week, but maybe worst case scenario about 50% down. It's probably looking at getting something like $330,000, maybe $350,000. But if you look down to day 64, instead of getting this $300,000, $350,000, it got $1.8 million, massive increase. If you look across on the other columns, there's the columns that start with the percentages. The first column of the percentages, that's the day-to-day change. So it had a 526% increase from the Thursday to the Friday. And then the column next to that, that's got the week-on-week change. So it had a 253% increase from the previous Friday. So that's the huge percent change that it actually got because it did the actual re-release, or whatever you want to call it. I think they're still calling it a re-release or a bonus material version, whatever the actual official name is. And so what's effectively happened is it's reset its box office to something like it was earning 4 weeks ago. And so if we look at how much money did it earn 4 weeks ago up until the re-release, it got somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 million. So $15 million is what it earned when it was earning this kind of money that it got right here. So that's perhaps one figure as a high point that we could look at that it could possibly earn. I think that's more than it'll get, but that is exactly what it had, and if it runs away the kind of box office run it had from 4 weeks ago, that's what we might be looking at. Now, if you look at the right-hand side of Infinity War got a total of $678 million, and down the bottom at this particular point in time, it's got $674 million. So it's got about $4 million extra that it got from this point on, and it looks like Endgame will out-earn it. So Endgame's going to get more than $4 million right now, and it's probably not going to get $15 million, but I'd put that as my high point with the way the numbers look right now. But I still suspect that they're going to have to start to bleed away. I don't think it's going to be able to sustain the money that it looks like it can. But at this stage, it's sustaining a lot of the money. So whether it's Spider-Man, even though Spider-Man was terrible for the film on the Tuesday, whether Spider-Man's keeping all the money in here or it's just more interest from it being re-released, whatever's happened, Endgame is keeping a lot of this money. So it had a huge increase, 526% increase from the Thursday to the Friday when it got re-released, and then it's actually keeping a lot of this money in line of how a normal film would keep its money week to week, which is not what's generally happened with re-releases. Normally they've had a lot of money very quickly, and then that's about it. Let's take a look at the international numbers now. What we have here are the weekly earnings Sunday to Sunday. If you look down towards the third bottom row, it got a total of $3.1 million before the re-release happened. So that was to that Sunday. The next week, the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday were just the normal film. And then the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday had the re-release information in it, re-release extra scenes or whatever you want to call them. And it increased the box office internationally for the entire week to $4.9 million. So instead of about halving the $3.1 million to maybe $1.5 million or something close to that, it got $4.9 million extra, 58% increase. Not as big an increase as what happened in the US domestic market, but a pretty big increase nonetheless. And then the week we've just had, it got $4.6 million, only a 6% reduction, which is a huge amount of money that it actually kept. So even though it had an increase, it should then start losing a lot of money, say losing 50% every week. It didn't lose 50% from the first time that this was actually re-released. It's actually kept around about the same amount of money. So that makes it very difficult to project out how much money it'll get from here, because right now it looks like it's not losing money at all, and there's people that want to see the film. I don't think that will keep happening. I don't think it'll get another $4.6 million in the week that we've got coming up. But that's what the figures look like right now. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. But if we assume it's going to get, let's say, around about a 50% reduction week on week from this point in time, which, again, that's not exactly how it looks it's going to happen, but let's just assume a 50% reduction. So that'll be around about $4.5 million. So $4.5 million is my low amount of money now I think it'll earn internationally. If we give it a 30% reduction from here on out, which is much more worse than what it's running at right now, but I think it's still better than what it'll actually get, it'll get another $14.5 million internationally. So these two figures I've come up with here for the big range that it could get internationally, $4.5 million to $14.5 million. That's pretty close to the range I had for the domestic market using completely different numbers of $4 million to $15 million. So a little bit strange that I'm predicting the same kind of range. So if you add these two figures together, we get around about a $9 million increase at the low end and about a $30 million increase at the high end. Now I think $30 million is far more money than it will earn, but if I just look at the figures for the last 2 weeks, that's the kind of trajectory it's on. So it's shown no evidence yet, with 10 days of this extra release or re-release, of actually bleeding money. So will it happen on the Monday? Maybe it will, and that's it done. But at this stage, there's no evidence that the money just happened really quickly over the weekend and it stopped. It's actually kept the money even after the terrible Tuesday when Spider-Man was actually released. But I do think it's going to have to start reducing money quicker. So I think the lower end of these numbers is more practical, which again is about $9 million. It needs $15.5 million extra to beat the Box Office Mojo figure. So I think it's going to fall short by a very small amount of money, but it's so close right now it could go either way. And if it does beat Avatar, it's going to beat it just by millions of dollars, which I have to assume means we're getting an Avatar re-release. An Avatar re-release surely can earn another couple of $1 million. That may be all it will need if Endgame beats it to actually retake the crown. So I think things might be getting a little bit silly if this is what's going to happen in the movie business and films just keep re-releasing just to beat the one on top. But I guess if they can make some money doing it, I guess they'll do it. That's what they're here for, to make money. So maybe that's what's going to actually happen. Maybe they'll re-release Avatar before Avatar 2 comes out, whenever that is in a couple of years' time. So that might be something that they could actually do. But nonetheless, right now, very, very, very close, ridiculously close. They both earned $2.7 billion, and for it to come down to what's going to be several $1 million only between which film's bigger, kind of crazy. So once again, the Numbers.com and Box Office Mojo do not have the same amount of money reported for Avatar. They've got $11.5 million difference between both of their websites. They both claim to get their figures from the distributor, which I believe in this case is Fox. So how they've got different figures for the international numbers when they claim to get them from the same place, I have no idea. The film's from 10 years ago. Fox also doesn't exist anymore. It's part of Disney, so the books can't really be cracked open and really checked, I wouldn't imagine, to see what is the real amount of money. Plus, the international figures always seem a little bit dodgy, so both the numbers are probably actually wrong. There's probably some other third figure that's the real figure, but nonetheless, we've got this bit of a gap between, a bit of a shame. Disney owns everything now, so if Disney comes out at some point and says that Endgame's bigger than Avatar, well, we can take that, okay? That's basically our official thing. So until Disney says it, I think, we don't really know what's going on. But Disney owns everything now, so it's really up to them. Right now, as it sits, Endgame has got 99.4% of Avatar's box office using the bigger figure, the Box Office Mojo figure. So 99.4%. That's how close it is. Absolutely crazy. So we'll see what happens in the coming weeks. Will Spider-Man help it out? Will there be some sort of boost due to the Lion King? Who knows what's going to happen, but it's going to be close either way. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.